Hey, I hope you're doing well. So, I just got back from Indian Wells. I ran 6 days of doubles clinics while I was there. Had a fantastic time with all my students, and I started noticing something new this year in these strategy camps that I did. It related to the ready position specifically. Now, normally I start things off with split step, but let's throw that out. Like people sadly, on the internet are so tired about hearing the split step. By the way, nobody does it though. There's still nobody does the split step, even though everybody knows that they're supposed to. But there's something else I've started queuing into that everybody knows they're supposed to do, but they're not doing. And it's even like one step before. It has to do with the ready position. So let's go ahead and look at a pro example first. Then I'll show you some student examples from the camps that I just did. So here's Bob and Mike Bryan getting ready to do a split step right before the ball is hit. Here comes the lift. Here comes their touch on the ground after contact is made. And so this, in essence, is their ready position. Like the ready position is just how you prepare yourself for the ball. Let's throw out the split step. Let's just go ahead and assume that you're not interested in the split step. Sorry if this is sounding kind of cynical, but um, it gets taught and talked about so much, but nobody does it. So let's just talk about ready position. A good ready position has four main criteria. Criteria number one is double shoulder width apart with the feet. So here's the shoulder width of, I don't remember which, I think this is Bob Bryan, roughly. And here's how wide his feet are. He's probably a little bit wider than double shoulder width apart, but pretty close. Number two, we need to have the heels off the court. Number three, we need to have a bend in the knees. And number four, we need to have a little bit of forward momentum with the body, which broadly speaking is probably going to be accomplished if your heels are off the court. But those are like the big four things that I like to look for. Okay. So we looked at that and I told my students what we're looking for, those four things. And I'm going to show you what that looked like in a second. But first, here's three students. We're going to look at them practicing their split step in a second, aka their ready position. But before we even talked about the split step, here's three students. So this student's looking pretty decent. Like this student A is split stepping. And by the way, it's because he's done camps with me before. So he knew I was going to be looking for it right out of the gate in this clinic. So he's lifting, his timing here's great. His heels are staying off the court, which is fantastic. He's got bend in his knees, which is fantastic. He's got a little bit of forward momentum. But look at his width. Let me take a different color here. There's his shoulders. Here's his feet. It's maybe 1.5, maybe, generously. Again, repeat student here. Somebody who's taken coaching from me before. Here's somebody who hasn't taken coaching from me before. Here's the hit. So we're not going to see a split step here. Here's his ready position. So as he gets ready, heels, one of them is off the court, not the other one. I'm not going to count this as a bend in the knees, kind of standing upright. And how about width? I mean, this is weak, frankly. Like here's this is basically just kind of hanging out. The analogy, the kind of funny analogy I kept using during the camps was, this looks like somebody who's just standing in the cereal aisle at the grocery store, just kind of looking for, trying to decide like what box of cereal to buy. And this is not an athletic position. This is just a casual hanging around, just kind of standing around, maybe standing in line like at the checkout position. We're not ready to do athletic stuff here in this position. Okay. And now here's another student. We're going to look at them practicing their ready position in a second. So here comes the ball getting hit on the other side. There's the hit. No split step. And this is 100% cereal shopping position. So we've got feet flat on the ground, no bend in the knees, no forward lean or momentum with the body, no forward posture, and width is shoulder width apart. So we're not ready. So even like take the discussion of split step off the table. We at least need to be physically prepared to do something sports, like do something athletic and engage ourselves. Okay, so I pointed this out to them. We started working on the split step. Now, here's kind of the fascinating part for me. We had the whole conversation about the four things that we're looking for. And then here's those those three players. So everybody's practicing their split step right now. And person by person, these three players that we just looked at, I had a conversation with each of them and talked to them about width because they're checking the other three boxes pretty well. But I was like, guys, we're not double shoulder width apart. So like, look at the starting position here. Here's this player. So like, okay, maybe 1.5, so much better than before. But watch how I have a conversation with this player in green in a second, and I'm like, let's get a little bit wider. And now watch the difference here. I kind of like show him like what we're looking for, and he keeps practicing. And let's see, I'll get out of the way here in a second. Okay, now we're starting to see close. Sorry, I'm blocking the way a little bit, but here's his shoulders. Here's his stance. Now we're getting close. Now we're in the ballpark. Now, I'm going to share something with you in a second. That was like super critical. So I just had that same conversation with the player in white. So before I had that conversation with him, here's his width. Here's his shoulders. Here's his stance. Right? It's like we just had this conversation about 2 times shoulder width apart. He's a little more than 1. But here's the thing, everybody. Okay, here's the important part. Remember the serial shopping, position? So compared to that, what this student in white here is doing is way wider. I mean, he was just standing there before. So this feels really wide, but it's not even it's not 2 times shoulder width, which is mega wide compared to what he was used to. The reality is, to get 2 times shoulder width apart is a gigantic difference. So when I have this conversation with him and I'm like, hey, you're doing better, but this is not what we talked about. And I really kind of push him and he's like, oh, really? Like, okay, all right, well, we'll give this a shot. Now we're starting to look like a tennis player, right? This is starting now to look pretty like reasonable. And it's no longer casual. And we're now starting to look athletic. But here's the thing, and here's the measurement here. Now we're close, and we're getting close to 2 times shoulder width apart. But okay, so here's the thing. So I had this conversation with those students in real time, and I was like, okay, good job, everybody. Good job practicing. Let's go back, grab some water. And the conversation that I had over and over and over in these camps, as we were going back and getting water, was the students were like, that's so wide. That's like incredibly wide. Like really, like you really wanted me to go even wider than what I was trying. And player by player by player, we sat down and I showed them the recording. I was like, look, here's you before I asked you to go wider. Here's you after I asked you to go wider. Does this look weird? Does this player look goofy in white and green? Do they look like they're overdoing it? Or do they just look like well-prepared athletes? Like they're actually getting ready to do something athletic? And of course the answer is like they're just kind of approaching now the position where they look like good athletes. But here's the thing, everybody. To them, internally, looking like a good athlete felt ridiculous. So what does that mean about how they normally, right? About how they normally move, about how they normally look, right? Here's that same player. The reality is that normally this player does not look like an athlete when he plays tennis. And doing the physical thing that it required to look like an athlete felt so foreign and so different and like such a contrast to like this happened over and over and over again in the 6 days that I was coaching. So that's why this is the first thing I wanted to talk about when I got home. This is why it's hard, everybody. Like this is why it's hard to be a good tennis player, is because we're all collectively used to doing very unathletic things. And without video, if I hadn't shown these players the result, they would have gone back and gotten water and in their mind been like, okay, like, sure, Ian had me do that, but there's no way that felt so ridiculous. That felt so dumb There's no way that's right. But the fact that I could sit down and show them and be like, look, you're just now approaching looking athletic. Good job. That like creates like a big aha moment for players. So if you're not going to do the right split step, fine. You think you are, by the way. Like if you're watching this, you probably think you are, but sorry, you're probably not. Like over and over and over every year. Like I do these camps, I do these clinics, and the vast majority of players, even the 4.045 players, are not doing a split step. So A, you're probably not. If you're not going to, okay, but let's at least get to an athletic position, like a good ready position. And closing that gap between what we feel and what we're really doing is the most critical part. Hope you learned something today. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.